Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to a podcast which is all about the Irish League, where we had dramatic late comebacks, multiple red cards, and an outfield player nets for more than half of football, and that is just in the top flight. As this week we go beyond the Premiership, with Barry Flynn joining us to share some of his valuable insight on the Championship and beyond. Should be a good one on this, your latest weekly edition of Kick and Match. Never a chore, always a pleasure. His return to the podcast for reporter, journalist and writer, it's Barry Flynn.
Good evening, Peter. Pleasure as always to be here.
It's great to have you there. I'm trying to think if we've had a natter since your podcast live appearance all the way back in whatever it was, March or May time. I can't believe we've done two this calendar year, but that was an amazing experience to see you live in front of an audience, because
live and exclusive. Yeah,
that's it. You know, you were there. You were shifting the book, which you've talked about, which people can obviously still grab. And what was really interesting about it is that I had a few people at that show that weren't really Irish League fans, my wife being the main culprit, and they were just there going, "Oh, we'll support Peter in this thing that he's doing." And I mean, genuinely, they were captivated by you, Barry. They say, "I don't really know exactly what the whole Irish League thing is, but all the stories they loved." And that's what I think's brilliant about chatting to you. You have got such a sharp eye for football, and you've got this amazing big brain about Irish League history, but it's the little things that you find and shine a light on.
It's the niche things, Peter. Yes, indeed. I enjoyed that evening, and I was just thinking it's 40 years since Live Aid. I think, apart from my appearance.
I don't think those two things are comparable.
No, I think my
Pug
appearance was akin to Freddie Mercury that night when he stole the show. I had them in the palm of my hand, but hey, that's just a personal opinion.
Well, a fun weekend to have you here. As I was saying in the intro there, having you here gives us a brilliant insight into the Championship, and news in recent weeks potentially could throw what we expected from that league totally up in the air. And we'll not start at the bottom and talk about teams who could be in that division again. But of a week where we saw some teams return to normality results-wise, and some, I guess, bizarre moments and very Irish League behaviour moments. I think we should start in Belfast at Seaview, a place that Glentoran hadn't lost in absolutely ages, but with about 5 minutes still on the clock, it looked as though it was potentially on the cards, a team who had been on a brilliant run against a team who was stinking out the joint. And in a few swift minutes, that stand behind the goal were celebrating, jumping up and down, couldn't believe what they'd seen. Unfortunately, they had red and black in their scarves, but they were majority green. Another crowning moment of what's been a brilliant season so far for Glentoran. That feels like a big result.
It does indeed, because it's all about getting over the line, Peter. And when I was listening in on Saturday, Michael Hammond was commentating, and I went, whoa, every time they went over to him. And when I heard that it was going the way it was going, I'm thinking, every Glentoran fan is there going to be going back across the M3, giving off about the team and sort of the management. And then it just transformed. And those transformative actual moments, David Fisher getting the ball and scoring the winner, the relief was palpable amongst the Glentoran fans, because for too long they've probably been going to season in, season out, and they've been watching games like that, throwing away a lead. But, is there something in the air for Glentoran? Because up until, say, this season, I think they would have come away in the wrong end of that result. But there's something in the air at the Oval, and that result on Saturday, to me, personifies the difference to Glentoran this season. They're battling. They never give up. I mean, 2 goals in the last 5 minutes. That's not a Glentoran thing over the last number of years. But yeah, that is a statement win in my view, because Seaview is an absolutely desperate place to go and get a win, because Crusaders they can go into another gear when they wish to. They did on Saturday, but Glentoran weren't beaten, and that's the difference.
When is Devine going to be talked about a bit more? There's very few more high-profile jobs in this country where the scrutiny and the spotlight oftentimes burns bright. But whilst they waltz their way through win to win, to even games like this where it's a bit of a comeback victory, it hasn't all been champion football. But he's doing something that his previous incumbents were unable to do. Get a bit of consistency and get a bit of doggedness in this side.
Hmm.
I think you would have seen other sides over the past 5 years or so collapse. We've seen some great Glentoran teams. This team looks like they've got a little bit extra in the tank, especially late on.
It seems to me being a manager of Glentoran, it's a bit like the film The Life of Brian. There was a famous part in that which says, "I know you are the Messiah because I've followed so many of them," right? And that sort of is the Glentoran management thing. But I'll tell you about Declan Devine. I was there the day he was appointed. It was actually at Stanmore Park. And I got a sense there, because he spoke to Joel after the game, that he was different from the rest that had come and gone. And the thing that he's been given is time, because last season the Glentoran fans could have went, here we go again, here we go again. But I think there's this respect for Declan Devine because he has that Glentoran connection and he has that know-how. And last season, okay, of course, they got the County Antrim Shield, but that's the County Antrim Shield. What they're crying out for in East Belfast is the Gibson Cup. That will be the Holy Grail. Just as Jim Magilton brought Cliftonville the Irish Cup, but they've been crying out for that since 2009 in East Belfast. And it's a bit like slowly, slowly, slowly. You're only as good as your last defeat in Irish League football. We all know that, but I think there's that sort of respect. The fans are sitting back at the Oval at the Sydney men and going, hold on, give it time, because I can go through them from Alan Kernahan. I was there the night at Anna United where Glentoran were put out of the League Cup, and I saw the anger, and he was sacked that night. Alan Kernahan was the Messiah when he came, and there's been messiahs after that. But in everything in football, you need time, and you have this sense that Divine is doing what he knows to do at Glentoran, and it's beginning to actually, come to fruition. We nobody knows, Peter, where we'll be after Boxing Day and after, January. But if Glentoran can keep that consistency that they've been showing, that ability and that will to win, well, quietly they'll go about their business, and they don't want to shout from the top of the stand at the Oval, we're going to win the league, because we've heard that a lot of times before. But trust Declan is, I think, the mantra amongst the Glentoran fans. But of course, that could change in 2 or 3 weeks. We know that, but they seem to be doing the right things.
The clocks have went back, and maybe that's the moment that everyone says that it can all fall apart. For Glentoran at the minute, it feels like heady heights for them. We feel like we've got this established top four, and I'm sure we will once the full account of games will be played, so they're even with the other competitors. Interestingly, Bangor being the one that's closest to them all, but we will get to them. Um, it's nice to be in and around there, but they do have to keep up with the likes of Coleraine, Larne, and Linfield, because not only do they want to be in the title race, but more importantly, they want to get back to the place which they've really missed out on over the past few years, and as the bedrock of really starting to grow the team and kind of pay back all this investment, and that is Europe. And I'm trying to get myself right here. Like, first obviously guarantees that we all know that. Second does as well. But can third maybe be up for grabs as well? Unless, because if the Irish Cup winners from somewhere else, that means even third doesn't guarantee you. So Glentoran, we could be sitting here saying, what a great season, competing with all the big boys. They're let's say 12 points off
Hmm.
fifth, but they're fourth, and they come a cropper against Dungannon or Cliftonville, whoever it may be in a European playoff, it will somewhat all be for nothing. So there's plenty of games to be played, lots of games, dozens to be played, but that's a big 3 points, because we've seen over the past 5 games there's been minor wobbles. They have to be very efficient to be up and about there.
Hmm.
But the big thing's to come back,
Yeah.
because it was late and they kept on coming and they kept on
That's
coming.
character. That's, not dropping your heads. That's coming from the sideline. Don't drop your heads. One of the most amazing games I witnessed was Crusaders coming back at Seaview and beating Cliftonville 4-3 in a game. That's what Seaview does, but it's usually Crusaders who do the grandstanding at the end. But you mentioned there about the European playoff, and Factor X this year, Peter, is the League Cup. Because when you talk about the playoff, the League Cup winners will go directly into that playoff final. Um, so if a team outside the that top four, as we talk about, get into that, that could skew the whole permutations for a lot of teams as well.
Oh, this is why I was like, I don't know if I like that. I get it, but we'll see how it all plays out. Let's talk about the Crues. You talk about there a great comeback for them in previous times. Now it's becoming less of a rarity. It's becoming a regular occurrence now that not only are they losing, but they're being on the wrong end of a comeback. That Carrick result still lingers, and here they fail to get any points from it. I mean, David Fisher, where was he? Forgot about him for a while, and he's the hero again there on Saturday. That fella grabbing the bin and starting to use it as a drum. It's one of the moments of the season so far. It's
Yeah,
those little things that I very much enjoy.
indeed.
I know people who listen to this podcast enjoy, but it's all laugh at good times. But those are some big points for the Crues. I know they probably were anticipating a downturn in fortunes, but after all these games, I think they're the only team in the league without a victory at
Hmm.
home. They look young. They look slightly disorganized as at the back, which you might say was what happened to them there on
Yeah.
Saturday. This was like everything about the Crues in a nutshell. They can get it out wide. They can cause a bit of chaos in the box. They can score. They can run at you, and then they can just lose their head at the back, and they're claiming
Well, if
nothing.
I look at the table, Peter, I mean, I haven't seen Crusaders in this position 20 years. I mean, when Stephen Baxter came along, the team was in trouble, but they have conceded 23 goals. That doesn't lie. The fact is, they've won three games. If to actually talk about Glenavon, where they are, that they're actually aiming to get Crusaders here, 3 points behind Carrick Rangers, Crusaders hasn't had it too good for too long under Stephen Baxter. Irish Cups, Irish leagues, you name it. But it's always going to be difficult for Declan Cadell to step in there. There's always going to be a transitional period. But the Crusaders fans they're very loyal. But I'm saying, looking down at that game on Saturday, I mean, that would epitomise a lot of what is wrong with Crusaders. Is that an element of, they didn't close the game down once they went ahead? Was it a lack of experience? We don't know. Or was it Glentoran were just, up for the game and they knew what to do to grind out a win? But Crusaders is a great club, always has been. But in the position they're in, I'm saying the fans are beginning to ask themselves a few questions. But you will get transitionary periods. We all know that. But it is so surprising to see Crusaders, who you and I will know through covering games, we're always at home, probably unbeatable, give them a goal start, just being at home. But it's not Fortress Seaview anymore, obviously.
It's amazing how North Belfast is becoming this soft touch, not just for the Crues, but for Cliftonville as well. The positives is that they've got 7 points still off Glenavon. There is this team that is just anchored at the bottom in the Lurgan Blues, and they do have 2 games in hand against them, so they've got something to turn it round again. At least they're scoring. At least there's some sort of bright sparks. That can often be the hardest thing for any team to do is score the goals. So with Cadell, it's just tightening things up at the back. But these are significant swings. That means they've come out with nothing.
Yeah.
This feels like a really memorable Irish League game for all the wrong reasons. If you're looking at it from a Portadown perspective, they host the current incumbents of the top position in the league. They're at home. They lose some significant players in the first half due to injury. And then their very influential goalkeeper, McCarey, gets sent off. They haven't got a reserve keeper on the bench. And even at halftime, you could have said game, set, and match. You wouldn't be surprised if bookies were paying out there and then. Maybe was a more brave performance than maybe some people expected in the position down to 10 men for a whole half of football. But Coleraine once again show their ruthless side, and it might have not been a complete blowout, but the Bandsiders get what's needed to be done to keep themselves top of the tree.
Absolutely. And I think, Peter, there's a difference. Friday night lights at Shamrock Park, it gives that added atmosphere and that performance against Linfield. Let's take nothing away from it. But when you get a Saturday, not a run-of-the-mill game, but a normal Saturday game against a team with the class of Coleraine, who are proving that. And of course, Matthew Shevlin and Joel Cooper get the goals in the second half. I wasn't at the game, but the fact that McCarey was sent off would just throw the whole plan that Niall had up in the air. And it's a team like Coleraine in their position with their undoubted ability will come in and exploit that. And that's what they did in the second half. And for every brilliant performance you get from Portadown, you're going to get a performance that'll have the fans scratching their head heading out of that ground. So Coleraine do what they do, professional in the end, and they all went there for 3 points. They got it, and it's just the way the ball bounces and the cookie crumbles that Portadown maybe did implode. But I still believe that on the big occasions, you got Linfield coming there under lights, you can raise your game. But whenever it's Coleraine on a Saturday in the Irish League, it'll be Coleraine coming up on top. And the fact is that the McCarey incident did bolster them for the second half. But they'll just move on. That's 3 points to them. And I'm sure Niall's still scratching his head after what occurred on Saturday.
Any questions over the red card? It's just something you ask in the situation, don't you?
No,
It's
no, no,
just
no. I think it
no,
was, yeah, it was just, how would you say, nobody complained.
no.
That was the way of it. And referee had left with no option. So that was the end of that. Move on. And you go in and you come out the second half with a disadvantage. And that's capitalized by, a pretty professional core inside.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm struggling to say that much different things every week on the podcast when it comes to Coleraine because they are proficient, they're stylish, and sometimes when teams go up against 10 men, it totally takes them out of their groove because the same kind of spaces aren't going to open up, and they're trying to unlock, which is more of a turgid couple of lines of sides, which, I mean, when I'm talking about backline and the way the midfield's set up, which is why you probably look at it and go, well, no wonder it's what they needed to score from corners, because that was the only way where they could kind of get a bit of a break there. So, yeah, a weird one for Ports. Kind of heard there talking about how it was the fourth red card in 7 games. I guess the answer is
Yeah.
don't do that. What do you make of Portadown? I think there was an injury to their reserve keeper, but in 2025, no reserve goalkeeper on the bench.
Yeah, that's a strange one. Be interesting to see who goes between the post and Saturday. I'd say there's a lot of speculation, but it's a strange one in this modern day, Peter, that there's not somebody there that can fill in. Usually, as I say, when something like that happens, they all look around and say, "It's anybody played any Gaelic football? Can you go
It's the
into the
most
goals?"
Irish League behaviour thing. Like I saw a paper there putting up like a montage of photographs, and it's just Gaelic player. It's Gaelic
Was that a
player.
newsletter?
Uh,
It's like Sean O'Neill with Antrim and
I think it
what you
was
call him,
Matthew Fitzpatrick was in for Glenavon at one point.
St. John's, that's right. Yeah. Ah, yeah. It's like Pat Jennings. He was the original. Played for Down, and then he sort of went to Newry, and then whatever. But he always said, Pat Jennings, it was the catching and the fielding that was giving him the advantage in Gaelic football. But yeah, it's a standard Irish League behaviour. Has anybody played Gaelic football? Can you go in the nets? Yeah.
Well, saying that, I saw one now. I think it was like a Mid Ulster Cup game. Andrew Mitchell, the rare cricket player. Thrown in,
That's
but also he's
right.
a big lump as well, so that probably helps the whole goalkeeper thing. So after what was it, 3 wins of 4 games from Portadown, they've got a couple of tough games and they'll have to do it. Well, it might be a 3 match ban for Aaron McCarey and all the injuries. Yet tough matchup for them. Coleraine go riding on, and if we go from Shamrock Park to a team that just visited Shamrock Park, but they go back home and they get a well needed victory, and they keep up that very good run they've got against Ballymena. Linfield once again claimed 3 points in the league. It was their usual kind of easy fare, but they were made to sweat at the end.
Yeah. Linfield are having a crisis if if you go by certain fans and certain observers. But this is the acid test tomorrow night, and as I say, you'll not be able to turn a sweet in your mouth in the showgrounds. And Coleraine and Linfield, basically it's going to be an acid test for Coleraine to see exactly where they're at. People might say Linfield are playing catch up. Yeah, they win their games; they're still level at the top. And David Healy will tell you not to look at the table until April time. So I'm really looking forward to this game tomorrow night. You've got two teams coming in. Linfield off the back of a mediocre win against Ballymena at Windsor Park. They just got about over the line, and fair play to Ballymena for putting it to them. But Coleraines, since they suffered that defeat, their wins at Ballymena and their win, on Saturday, it's showing a team in form. But it's all right being in form, but you have to prove it against the champions, and that is the key question tomorrow
Some
night.
moments in that game, when you look at the highlights, you kind of see that the Ballymena goal comes from Linfield somewhat switching off, and yes, it doesn't come directly from that set piece, but it starts the situation, it's the early phases for eventually the ball coming in, and a great header from old boy of Windsor Park, Matthew Clark, scoring.
Yeah. Hmm.
And there was a few times there was even like a free kick where it's passed straight into the box, down low in the success Udigan, and it's those things which Linfield fans are still tearing their hair out. They're questioning how the team's set up. They're questioning some of the performances from players. They're questioning which players are featuring and which aren't. But it's the ones on the pitch. They're full time side, and you
Hmm.
think of the better Linfield sides, because always people go, that was a great Linfield side. But even the ones of the past 5 years that have been great and have got across the line when it comes to the league, usually they're dull but efficient. And when you lose that sharpness, you worry that maybe the identity of Linfield could slightly unravel.
I don't know whether Windsor Park is just underwhelming because, you listen to the game on Saturday and Linfield score, there's a cheer. Ballymena score, there's a muted cheer. You can hear that. But you knew Linfield would come back and get across the line. But this notion about Linfield fans about the team 10 years ago would have beaten Ballymena 5 or 6 nil. It's a different world we live in now. But the people coming out of Windsor Park on Saturday would still have been critical of that Linfield display, but they did it. They got the 3 points at the end of the season. Nobody's going to think about that game in October against Ballymena. But to me, it's all a bit muted, maybe by the team, the ground, the fans. I don't know what it is, whether it's Windsor Park or whether it's hard to actually raise your game in such an arena like that. But listening to it, you knew Linfield were going to win. I knew Linfield were going to win, but they got the shock whenever Matthew Clark got the goal. And very surprising to hear that because listening to the game before that, but that's what Ballymena are capable of at Windsor Park or any ground in the league. But Linfield just do what Linfield do, got over the line and without any frills or without any whatever, they got the 3 points. But, underwhelming, Peter, sometimes.
Dungannon continue to go through the gears this time, taking care of business against the worst side in the league based on the table at the minute. Jack Malone, I mean, if he could have a free kick every week like that, they could be on to something. He was very close to scoring again in the same way that he did to beat out
Yeah,
Carrick. Michael Connors very positive off the back of that result. Still a bit of silliness when it comes to the red card. That Glenavon had
yes.
there, because I mean it's silliness losing the head. They're not in a situation where they can be losing any players.
Hmm.
But Dungannon get the goal, get the win, and Junior is starting to look like it kind of came off the back of the summer, a wee bit later in the summer, wasn't it? But one of the
Yeah.
signings of the season, like how effective is he? He is just getting goals and helping them get points.
Yes, Junior O'Gate Uzekwi. It's absolutely superb when you consider the way that Dungannon began this season and the fact, they're grinding these games out. But I do feel sorry for Glenavon. They did get that bounce under Michael O'Connor to get that first win last week, but then to go up to, Steinmore Park, it's a hard place to go anyway. But Michael O'Connor's remaining positive reminds me of the when I look at the table, it's like the Oscar Wilde. We're lying in the gutter, but we're looking at the stars. It's it's a crisis there now at Moorview Park, and whether Michael can turn that round on a longer term basis remains to be seen. But they did get that little bonus going up, and I saw the highlights, and they weren't too far away. They were sort of very competitive, but Dungannon got over the line because it's just as if they clicked into life. everybody who was watching the league would say, look, a bit like Cliftonville, Dungannon will come through this bad patch, which they have. And I love listening to Roddy McCarey because he's so positive and he's so pleasant and so happy after every game. You know, he is just completely 100% sort of optimistic and fair play. Maybe there was a hangover with Europe, with the cup, but they're sort of chugging away doing what Dungannon do. But for Glenavon, wow, I mean, the next game is so important for Michael to get them reset to go again and to prove that first game after he was appointed was not sort of like that effect of coming in or that bounce that you would get. So it's a difficult task. And at Christmas, if you look at the table, it just could be dire for Glenavon. So we hope that they can turn this corner.
Orno O'Kane, the player for Glenavon, who got his marching orders. I don't know if was it 2 yellow cards on the bounce. I mean, the tackle could have got him a yellow card. The random like elbow could have done it for him as well.
Second caution, I think it was.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I mean, he could have got 2 separate yellow cards to make it 3 if we really wanted to be fun about it. But yeah, not good. And of course, who they got next? Away at Coleraine. Not a fun fixture for them. Two things I've got to ask you about Glenavon. First and foremost, Barry, out of 10, how hard is that kit to read numbers wise?
oh, goodness me. I always thought Coleraine was the worst because they had the stripes, the blue and white stripes down the back with the like a blue numbers on the back.
I remember
And
that.
Peter, you know and I know the words when you're sitting in the box and you shout out, there's been a goal, who scored it? Will you give me a minute? Turn round was the worst thing. But when somebody turns around and you can't see it, it's actually it's a cardinal sin. Wow. Well, I haven't seen them this season, Peter, but it would be one of my bugbears if I was there and I couldn't make out the actual numbers who got the final touch.
It's a full, I mean, kind of bright pink. I'm gonna say it's salmony pink,
Saw
but it's got a
that.
brightness to it. And then it's the numbers and all the little chevrons and all the like of it is like a dusty blue, which you think would be a bit more striking, but just when you look at it, at least on a TV screen here, it
Hmm.
is it's very hard,
Yeah.
particularly the wee kind of winter sun as well. The other thing I've got to ask, I mean, you are an historian, I would describe you as when it comes to the Irish League, and a lot of the stats that are being chalked up for Glenavon, especially before that win against Carrick last week, were history making lack of wins. In all your time watching the Irish League, a team in a situation that they are in,
No, I've never seen
I
it.
mean, the history book is not kind on their
No.
chances. Like it should, if there's anything bar 12th for Glenavon, it is the Mourneview Miracle.
I look at it and you know a long and proud history for Glenavon and those people come week in week out to Mornview Park. When I look at the table, it is pretty stark, Peter. In the days of old, when there was no relegation in the Irish League, and then you had a B division, Cliftonville being the amateur side finished bottom of the league every season. But because they were Cliftonville, the amateur side, and Solitude, I don't know what it was. They were never had they applied for re-election. Cliftonville were bottom. You know, they won 2 games in the season. But that you'd have to go back there, in my view, unless Marshall Gillespie's listening in, to find something as abysmal as the way that started. And it is stark just looking at it. And it would be the type of story that would go viral if they were to survive on the last day. But I think coming into November, it's not going to get any better.
They've got some tough games, as we mentioned there, against
Yeah.
Coleraine, and the teams directly above them have
Hmm.
games in hand, which could make that gap look even more stark. The word you used, but we'll go higher up the table, and it was a team on a tear, held back by a side as they travelled away. Bangor held by Larnet away. What do you make of that
Yes.
result? I mean,
Yeah.
the Bangor just keep turning up and keep collecting points. This team looks very
Yeah, you
formidable.
saw them in the first game of the season. That might have been the Premiership bounce that they got and they beat Cliftonville. But when we look at it now, maybe that wasn't such an eye-opening result. But Bangor are just, when I heard they went ahead against Larne on Saturday, I wasn't surprised at all. I think they're a team playing with confidence under Lee. Ben Arthur's is to me, and I'd seen him in the championship for a couple of seasons. He's got that gangly way about him. He's definitely got the mark, and he'll always find the target. And they're just doing the right things at the right time. And going down to Clannyboy Park, nobody fancies that. Nobody fancies that. And fair play to Lee. They've taken that team into the Premiership from last season. They've made a few changes, but they're playing with belief, and I think they're playing as a unit. And their place on the table is a reflection of that, and it's fully warranted, fully deserved. They'll not go down this season, in my view, and I don't think they'll get the second season slump either, because it's too not that it's too big of a club. They've built so much over the last number of years, coming from where they've come from, and they must be living in dreamland. And fair play to them, because I saw the work was put into it in the championship. And I know the backroom team, Bradley Ferguson, guys like that there, absolutely, dedicated to that team. And it shows you what you can do with limited resources. But you see the crowds they're bringing in, the Clanny 1,500, 1,800 every time they're playing at home. That's big money coming in rather than five, 600 at a championship game. So it's a vision, and it's building. And results like that against Larne on Saturday are just, to me, the epitome of what can be done by a club that has a bit of belief, and the players go out and play for the manager.
Well, Barry, I was in the Bangor press box there last week or so, and I'll
The
tell you
media
what,
suite.
they're pining for you.
Who are the?
They're pining for you. They're like, "Where's our Barry? We remember we used to get Barry, and now they get folks like me
Yeah,
covering
until
their
they get
games." You
beaten,
know.
and then I'm the worst person in the world. I mean, I'm barred from that many grounds in the Irish League because I'm a scud, particularly Ballinamollard. Don't ask me.
Are you surprised by the way Arthur's has been able to make that step up?
Not really, because he came through from no age the Premier Intermediate League. He's loyal to Bangor. He's also, when we talk about Gaelic footballers, he plays for Ballycran. He's a hurler, and he has that unbeatable style with the elbows and the ability to turn up on the eye for goal. I think he was one of the most exciting players in the Championship last season. That's been translated into the Premiership. Fair play to him, and a nice guy through and through. And you never know, come the transfer window, there might be a few clubs maybe sort of having a wee eye for Ben, but gentleman he is.
Yeah, well, Bangor have really put plenty of their eggs in his basket, even last year, committing him down to these contracts. And
Hmm.
sometimes, as we've seen, these teams need to tie down the men, which they think are going to be the difference makers. He is one of them. I do think, for having watched them and even looking back at some of the highlights from the game there against Larne, I think the likes of Tiernan Bonvella and Lewis Harrison are getting overlooked. You can even see the way Mulvena drove with the ball and had that cross, which eventually was nicked on to challenge the keeper. And then here comes the marauding run from Arthur's to knock it in the back. Look, for Larne, maybe that this is just going to be the types of games, the difference between that dominant, what looked like it was going to be a dynasty kind of side, which they had a couple of years ago, and the side that they are now, still figuring it out, still there's a few nuts and bolts to fix. And they gave it a good go, but they just aren't able to get the 3 points against Bangor. Maybe that isn't as he said bad a result, but any kind of points now dropped against not the other top
Yeah.
four could be seen as a bit of a blotch on their copybook. But as we've talked about previously on this podcast, there's plenty of big games before. By all accounts, the noise out of Inver Park is that they're looking to tie down some of their big names, and Ferguson being one of them. So, they've got their manager,
Hmm.
and now we can see a couple other pieces of what we expect to be the next era of Larne. Probably some familiar faces, but also maybe some new ones stepping up to the
Well, I
plate.
mean, third place at this point of the season, it's credible to Lauren. Of course, Gary Haverin getting that permanent role now, will be a fillip, because it takes away from that the unknown with the Interpark club. I would love to see the Lauren fans coming back the way they were. I mean, I was watching the game on Saturday, and you can see a Saturday evening. It was a good crowd at it, but that glory and that glory days that they had 3 or 4 years ago, and then all they've been through with the boardroom, etc., and all the management ups and downs. Credit to the team that are still playing for the shirt and are still battling and are still competitive. It'll be an interesting to see how that pans out throughout the rest of the season. But dropping 2 points against Bangor on Saturday would not have been on the agenda.
Well, Bangor is starting to be the side that I thought Carrick were going to be after I saw them get that victory against Dungannon, what feels like an absolute age ago, because they're tight and compact at the back, but they can just transition from one end of the pitch to the other and then just deliver. We go to Taylor's Avenue as our final game of the roundup here, and that team which I saw a couple of months ago just seems to be gone. The juice is dissipating from the back line, and they go up against a Cliftonville side who have struggled to get things going from an attacking sense. Yes, they get things done against a shook Linfield side in the middle of the week there in the cup, but they peppered that goal with plenty of opportunities. It's a bit of a set piece. I mean, if you're trying to find
Yeah.
anybody in the box, big Sean Leopard is the one. I mean, Cliftonville fans will hope after all the injury issues he's had that they can now build up a back line with him as a part of it.
Yeah.
And then they, maybe you might say, a critical Cliftonville fan will say, yeah, we get that one goal, but we just simply couldn't convert from the other
Yeah.
chances. But
Mhm.
a vital win at an important time for Jim and
Yeah, it
Gilda's
was
men.
great to see Sean Leopard score. I saw him play for Institute and I'm very impressed, and I can see why he was sort of picked up at that stage. He gets his goal, that will make them grow in confidence. Cliftonville edged that result on Saturday, but we always know that Cliftonville have that within them, to kick on, to start. The table, okay, at this point, it will reflect their ability up to now, their performances up to now, but that Cliftonville team has got that wee bit more in it and they need a bit of confidence. What's going on behind the scenes, the noise behind the scenes isn't helping. As I say, if you look at a table and see Crusaders in that position, I haven't seen Cliftonville in that position for, at least 20 years. So that win on Saturday, they could have come away, with a draw or a defeat, and that would have added to Cliftonville's woes. But this might help them. And also the fact that they actually ran Linfield ragged last week in the Antrim Shield. It shows you that if Jim can get them playing and Jim can get them, edging those wins away at Carrick, well, it just, bodes well for Cliftonville going forward.
Let's get down to it then, Barry. It's one of the reasons why I have you on. It's one of the reasons why many people have clicked on to this to hear some of your insight. It's a league which you have had an eagle eye over for the past number of years, and this one is one of the more unique campaigns for various reasons at the top and at the bottom. Up until a couple of weeks ago, it looked as though Anna United were going to run away with it, but pre-season, one of the favourites, the Limavady, have been going through the gears, getting themselves up and running. What role do you think the chat, and at the minute it hasn't been changed, we haven't heard anything that says it's any different, that there will be no relegation in this championship this year. What role do you think that could play after the games that we've seen played are already in there? Because it just completely changes the playing field for all these teams.
It changes the dynamic totally. And speaking to managers before I interview them, you're making small talk and I say, what do you make of the fact that there's no relegation? And they don't say it is what it is. What they're more or less saying is, that's going to skew the league. To me personally, coming into the new year, you could have 9 clubs in that championship that will have nothing to play for except pride. And we had the relegation for years and years, and that meant if you were in that bottom six, over the Christmas period or the transfer window, you might buy in or do things to try and improve the side because you were in a battle. You didn't want to go down to intermediate level. So to me, it's going to boil down literally to Loughgall, the Welders, Limavady, and Annie United, and that four, they're up there for a reason. And if you come into the second part of that season and you're going down to Ballinamalard on a cold, Tuesday night or whatever, and they've nothing to play for, but they raise their game. And I know people will say that, the best teams will always win the championship and whatever. But I just think to look at it from, with a cold eye and say, look, What is what is that doing to the competitiveness of the lower part of the bottom part of that championship? And even when you bring that into the context that there's been talk now about the Northern Amateur Football League and the three tiers that were envisaged, there's a bit of uncertainty there about whether, and David Jeffrey mentioned it on Saturday in the Telegraph, it would be so unfair to make a decision that Anna United, not Anna, Armagh City or Dundela would be told that, hey, you are in a relegation battle because the third tier is not ready. We don't think that's going to happen, but it's the uncertainty that's been there from the start of the season. Um, the clubs that are going to be competitive, who will want to get up to the Premiership, yeah, those clubs will battle it out. But the other thing is you're going to be playing clubs with nothing to play for. And it just seems to me that for the whole 3 or 4 months after Christmas, it's going to be a kickabout for a lot of teams meeting each other, say Armagh City playing Ballymallard on a Saturday afternoon in early April. It's just going to, where's the competitive, where is the ambition, and where is what is at the end of it for them apart from like pre-season friendly, but because that's the nature that will take. So I just think, okay, this is one season. If they do bring up another four into a table, into a league of 16, that's a new dynamic. Let's see how that goes. But I think 25, 26, from my perspective, watching the championship, I very rarely have covered any of the teams in the bottom of the league, the bottom six, because I'm concentrating on the top three, top four, top five, where you'll get competitive action. So okay, it's an experiment for 1 year, but also within the context of the uncertainty that's been created, I just think that the authorities need to get it resolved very quickly, for the sake of the league and the sake of that plan and the pyramid below it.
I've nipped down into the PIL. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I know this is the nature of the beast when it comes to this competition. But here we are, about to hit November, and
Hmm. 3 games, isn't it?
three, 4 games. Nearly City's played 3 league games. It's the unique quirk of it all. But even if we were to go up then to the championship and football played on the pitch, etc., etc. But you'd look at the top six at the minute of it being Newington, Loughgall, Queens, Welders, Limavady, and Anna, and the makeup of these divisions has changed massively over the past 10 years, ups and downs and all the rest. But outside of Loughgall, I think looking at that, it doesn't scream championship. You wouldn't be surprised. That probably was a PIL lineup only a couple of years ago. I know Limavady are our former top flight team, this century, the past 25 years. But it's not exactly the teams of old of Bangor and Ards and all the rest. They're still there, but they're just not currently fighting at the top of the table.
There was a whole big talk, Peter, about the stadium fund when it was sent out. And a lot of these clubs I go to, I can remember them being in the Premiership or the top league when it was 16 teams. For example, Armagh City. And another example would be Limavady United. Went and covered them back in the day because they were bringing Linfield and Torn up when they were in that 16 league team. But one of the things I've noticed is some of those grounds, since they've dropped out of the higher league and they've been playing for so many years in the lower league, there's a lot of work needs done in those grounds to bring them up to Premiership standards at what we have within the Premiership now. I'll give you an example. I was at Loughgall on Saturday, and when they were in the Championship, I had to sit on the stand on my knee. With my book on my knee, there was no press facilities. When I went down on Saturday, there was a TV gantry there, which is part and parcel of what you need apparently
Aye,
to
that was my
get
home
into the
last
Premier.
season.
Was it? You were down there, yeah.
Aye, that was
So,
me. I remember that local. I almost miss it this year.
but I was very surprised because I used to sit in the balcony and watch the games. That was the way it was. But when I go to Armagh, I can see Armagh, there hasn't been any investment in that ground. It's the same in Limavady, the showgrounds up there. It's the same as it was. Whether they are ready for Premiership football, I gather if Limavady did it, they would go to the showgrounds
Mm-hmm.
at Coleraine. Anna United, for example, I'd imagine there's some arrangement with Portadown
Well,
would be
the talk was a
required.
couple of years ago that they also were going to go to the Coleraine Showgrounds. Wasn't that the chat as a part of their application process? So,
Yeah, I
you know,
remember seeing Ards at Solitude for a number of years. But Well, we talk about, the investment that goes into it, and you can see that you've got, they talk about the Premiership and the Championship as if these are, done and dusted. These are the go-to places. But I just look at some of the grounds in the Championship, and I see there's an awful lot of work done in order to bring these grounds up to what even the standard would be for the Premiership. But hey ho, the players, the managers, the fans, they go there Saturday in, Saturday out, and they enjoy, and they're as passionate as anybody in the Premier League. But I'm looking at the top table now. Loughgall, they come up and had a great season and a bad second season. Harlan Wolf Welders, that ground is just sitting waiting on Premiership football because it's a go-to stadium. Queen's University, you've been to the Dub, of course, covering games. Uh, Newington are playing at Inver Park. Any United's ground wouldn't be capable, and Limavadi's ground wouldn't be capable either. So there's a question mark there. If that is the top team, so they are the top teams in the actual championship. And then you look at Ards. Institute, they're playing at the Brandywell. Warrenpoint have got their own ground. Ballinamallard has got their own ground. That's another ground when I've been at, and I've noticed that, since they were in the Premiership, the Ferry Park is not what it was. Armagh City, another ground, and Dundell at Wilger Park. We all know the problem with them, or that team going up to the Premiership. So there's a lot of questions when you look at the teams from 1 to 12 in the Championship about their ability to go up to meet the standards for the Premiership and B, sustain or maintain a challenge because we're talking about clubs operating out of budgets that, Linfield, Glentoran, Larne, we talk about the top six, the bottom six in the Premiership. I mean, this is another league altogether, of course, but you're on a different zone here when it comes to being able to actually buy in and maintain players. So there seems to be, to me, you need to appreciate there is a big difference, whether it's in play, whether it's in ability, whether it's in the players, and also the facilities between the Premiership and the Championship. And that would need to be addressed because I think when we looked at those clubs, was there six or seven that would not be able to bring, they haven't got a home ground and they would need to get another ground to play at in the Premiership. And I think that's a glaring issue. And I don't think that stadium fund is going to resolve that either.
What's interesting, because I will say, do you remember? I obviously know that you do remember, but for those who can't recall, when the league went down from top flight, that is, went down from 16 to 12, it was an application process, which of course, famously, one team missed the deadline and didn't make it, which is the last time Bangor were in the top flight. And as a part of that, as you know, success was factored in, but ground and facilities and professionalism, that was a part of it. And
Hmm.
we are getting to the point now where, the big teams are getting bigger. We have full-time sides. There's no point standing in the way of progress. But also we're starting to see the gap now between, there might only be 12, 13, 14, 15, maybe 16, what you might consider top flight kind of teams that can
Hmm.
mingle. Obviously, this is football. It's all about, going from, as we've seen with Newry and Bangor, going from the parks up to the Premiership. But
Yeah.
are you surprised that, because the whole third level, whatever happens there, is totally up in the air once again of how that's going to be set out and how amateur football will be dealt with in this country. And maybe it's just sticking a pin in it for a year. But are you
Yeah.
surprised that because under the original set of circumstances, there'd be no relegation and pretty much the top four would scoot up? And there was no discussion that Niffle would close the door behind them. But
Yeah.
it was very much a case of a bit like we used to see in the top flight where Loughgall would finish top and we would go, well, no relegation this year because Loughgall weren't seen as a team that could be top flight. There
Hmm.
could be a situation where pretty much if you were top of what is currently PIL or the amateur senior division, whatever it's going to be, that you get there and you might not be able to go up and down. It just depends on facilities and ambition and all the rest. Long way around, are you surprised that Niffle haven't just went right? And maybe they've held back on this to try and keep sporting integrity for this
Hmm.
season intact. That they haven't went, well, it's all about an application process to get into the
Hmm.
top, this second tier of Irish League football where it moves towards something closer to what you
Hmm.
see in the League of Ireland, which is two semi-professional kind of divisions.
Peter, an enigma within a conundrum. When I look at it, I mean, I will make a comment, and you talk about the grounds being developed. There's a number of grounds that were developed 15 years ago and are lying playing Ballymena League now. That's Donegal Celtic built two brilliant stands up there when the Sports Council for Northern Ireland came in and gave them a ground sitting, a
With room to
rusting
expand, Barry.
with room to expand. Um,
Lopsided, you might call those stands.
Upside. The other problem is that, if you look at the teams, Ballymena, they play on a council ground. Council own that. Derry City play on a council ground. The Welders play on a council ground. So it shows you that whenever there's, public money can go in and support that. Queen's University own the Limavady Showgrounds. Now, Queen's University is one of the richest organisations in Northern Ireland. And I was very surprised some lady
The
left the
Limavady
showgrounds.
Showgrounds.
Yeah, some lady left the Limavady Showgrounds in her will to Queen's University back in the 19 whatevers. So, that you're not allowed to, on the understanding that you're not allowed to actually use it for anything apart from sporting. They're massive showgrounds. There's a Gaelic ground down below, but the showgrounds itself, Queen's University own it. But this whole the unknown unknowns, as I talk about, when that comes, when the stadium fund went out, it was like, this is what we're doing. And the next thing is they've awarded money. And the next thing is there's talk of judicial reviews. Now, we don't know what is going on amongst the Northern Amateur Football League. What is the problem there? But if they do decide to bring four teams from the Intermediate League and bring them into the Championship, who's to say that there wouldn't be some sort of, objection or a legal thing coming in the background to say, hold on a second, we're being discriminated against because of this, that, and the other. We don't know what the problem is, but what they need to do, Peter, is resolve it ASAP.
Because if you look at it from a pure history, ground, facilities, again, football's played on the pitch, just do it that way, fellas, and then there's no issue there. You would look at the PIL and say the big boys from a infrastructure point of view is obviously Newry. You then might add in
Lisburn Distillery.
Distillery, yes. Ballyclare, but I mean that is almost becoming ancient history. It feels like Ballyclare Comrades with their brand new plastic pitch, and then it's some might say Ballymacash, but they don't have the previous kind of success. There'll be people banging the drum for upstart support Stewart and the likes. I guess what the positives are is that you see Strabane and Rathryland come in with, and even Dollingstown from over the past decade come in and say, we want to be here. What that looks like from a infrastructure and building fans and eventually
Yeah.
then knocking on the door of Niffle 2 or whatever that league's going to be
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
very interesting. And you see, if we go back to the championship, which is what we're talking about, you see those teams, the likes of the Anna and Newington and all the rest, like they are still having massive successes. If we're to go back to the football,
Hmm.
Anna United, it's been said before, they have been hovering around the top of the table for, what is it, maybe 4 or 5 years now. They've never been able to
Yeah.
get across the line. It's usually based on this mad last dash. On this occasion, they are starting with this brilliant run, and the only team that's really toppled them is a team that looked to be the favourites and are probably going to be their
Yeah.
main competitors, Limavady.
Well, Anna had a very rude awakening from Carrick Rangers in the playoff, and from somebody who watches the championship, I was surprised that Anna, they went down so heavily to Carrick Rangers. And to me, there was a couple of things last season. There was that result in the playoff, and there was also the two cup games in Ards were beaten by Cliftonville, and Bangor lost out to Dungannon. And I thought, looking at that, there was a difference, definite difference, a higher level that the Premiership's playing at. Anna United have come back, and Oran Kearney made the comment they seem to have done their end of season run at the start of the season. Um, Limavady beat them. Many people said before the league, and I didn't sort of buy into that Limavady would come through, and they seem to be doing that. It's the experience of the Lorries. And there's a young lad called John Butcher. He's the most exciting player I've seen in the championship since Tiernan O'Connor on the wing there for Limavady. Paul Owens has got a good team together. Um, had, they had their wobbles, but I think they will come through because Anna, they're hard to beat down at the BMG Arena. But if Limavady do come through, I think they were maybe the favourites beforehand. But I was down on Saturday at Loughgall, and I must tell you, Peter, that they talk about every team is capable of beating every other team. I saw Newington in the first 20 minutes play some of the best attacking football I have seen in a number of years through Jay Donnelly and Rory Donnelly and a guy called Seamus Burns who was, excellent. He skimmed the crossbar in the opening minutes. Loughgall didn't know where to look. And that team were so exciting. And it just shows you that that team was established in 1979. Okay. They are in the shadow of Cliftonville and North Belfast. Newington is an area of the Limestone Antrim Road. And they tried the ground share with Solitude, but I don't think it worked out. But they are so capable on their day. You can see the two Donnellys. But you know, Newington's biggest day in their history was the day they beat Glentoran in the Irish Cup at the Oval. And you look at these other teams in the leagues underneath, in the intermediate tier, and you can see teams have come, your Moyola Parks, and teams have had their big days in the Irish Cup. But where's the sustainability when you consider what's happening at the top of the Irish Premiership? And you see, I've talked about the Championship not being of that standard. Particularly, you've a top six there battling for promotion, and then you've a bottom six there. But then when you delve into this league, which is going to be the Northern Ireland Conference League or whatever, it's the sustainability is really something. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, thinking, we can get this new model and whatever, but it does boil down to money. It boils down to facilities, and it boils down to being able to get a team and to compete over a longer period. I look at Loughgall, the way they came down last season, and Darren Murphy spoke to me on Saturday. It's so difficult for them within the league this season. I saw Newington. It was a great game, by the way, but where is the sustainability of Bangor? They're showing that first season. We've already discussed that, but maybe they have a model that can keep that going. I look at Dungannon, that is the model for the last 15, 20 years where a club can buy well, sell well, and they're sustainable. And they won the cup last year. And that is the model that, teams should be looking for in the Premiership. But I don't know whether that is there yet in the Championship.
I would have looked at Loughgall as a team who, yes, had a very poor season overall last year and were probably kind of browbeaten into relegation, and sometimes that's hard to shake off and bounce back when you're going up against all these upstarts and the pressure's on you. They
Hmm.
haven't been all guns blazing, and I'm surprised by some of the results for them. Yes, they've been stuck in the mud ever so slightly, but I even look at that side which drew against Newington, and I like a lot of the players there. Maybe I've just got rose tinted glasses with some of the squad, but you see Ross Glendenning playing top flight football last year. Ben Murdoch has been a stalwart for them. I know Dougie Wilson is probably in the twilight of his career, but Pablo
Yeah.
Andrade, Adam Toe, I'm a big fan of. Conor McCluskey, McElroy, Kirk McLaughlin is their top goal scorer. And then on the bench, Hoey, Norton, Reese Jordan, Prendergast, Carroll. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a top end championship side, no?
Yeah, I agree totally. But when you see the game and it's, cold light of day, they got two penalties, which were seriously careless by Newington. It's Paul McElroy went down both times and Kirk McLaughlin put the ball away. Those, to me, that wasn't on the cards after the first 20 minutes. Newington were just playing this flat, fast-flowing game that Loughgall could not deal with. And they got the two penalties, but, Darren, after the game, I thought it was a fair result after the game because there was, a lot to take away for both sides. But if it wasn't for that sort of moment of madness, twice it was deja vu. McElroy down, McLaughlin scores, and there were two pushes in the box. That could have been sort of 2-3-0 to Newington, and then that would have added to the woes. They're not clicking. They're not playing the way I think Darren wants them to play. And if you look at it over the last, was it seven draws, Peter? I didn't get a chance to say to Darren, is it psychological or something, not being able to kill off games or not being able to raise that game? But seven draws, if you look at that, seven, if they'd have won five of those, that would have been an extra 10 points and they'd have been well ahead in that league at present. if it happens, November could come together, whatever, they could get that mentality, that winning mentality that could really, take Loughgall to a different level. But looking at them on Saturday, I find that they didn't gel, and Newington's style of play was a joy to behold at times.
Well, a side who have been the nearly men over the past couple of years have been the Welders, and they're still a wee bit off the boil when it comes to the table, but they look to be growing week in and week out. Have the odd blip here and there, but a nice return victory on Saturday. This probably isn't the strongest Welder side which we've seen over the past few years, but they still have talent in some key positions. Is this kind of it for Paul Key? He's got to make it happen this year.
I thought last season, maybe Paul, he's put a lot into the Welders. It's a big journey for him. Josh was there, and he left his son. Tiernan O'Connor left, but they brought a guy in from Ballyclare called Brian Healy. He's only 21 years of age, and
Oh, we're big fans, Barry. You know we've waxed lyrical
nine
before.
goals. It's Paul Key's ability to, see that talent and bring it in. But will he be there in January? One of the things I noted was, I don't know what was going on, but I see that initially it was Matthew Ferguson came back with the Welders. He went to Bangor, and now he's back at Dundela. So it shows you that Paul Keegan always bring a player in to do a job. He did with Matthew, and then he went to Bangor, but now he's back with Dundela, who are struggling within that league. But we talk about Newington living in the shadow of Cliftonville. It's the same for the Welders and Dundela. And I'll tell you what they have done this year. There's traditionally that East Belfast derby between Dundela and the Welders. They're playing that on the Saturday. I think Boxing Day is the 26th, which is a
Yep,
Friday. So,
it's
so that
Friday.
game is
Yep, Boxing Day is 26th this year.
that game on the 27th, on the Saturday at 3 o'clock, is the only game in Northern Ireland, right? And 2 years ago, they did 1,800 at the game at the Blanchflower Stadium. So I'd imagine with the only football game in town, you will get a lot of people at that. Very intelligent, because it'll be a festive season. We've got a good gate, and if you're at the big two derby the day before, a lot of people will come along and keep the party going afterwards at the Blanchflower Stadium.
Queens are making people sweat. They look to be a kind of sticky wicket this year. Not that they
Mm.
would feel like they were going to get relegated this year, but they're sitting quite nicely in the top half. Armagh City have regressed, despite our boy Igor Rakowski still knocking it in for them. And there was a time where you thought maybe Arts could make a bit of a play here with their squad, but a couple of losses on the bounce is kind of
Yeah.
sticking a pin in that balloon.
I think you have to be an eternal optimist to be an Ards fan, because last year when they got the highlight of getting to the Irish Cup semi-final, the joy when they beat Loughgall in the quarterfinal, it was great to see. But for every build-up you get, there's an awful fall down in being an Ards fan. They're a loyal band of 300-400 people would go along, but that's a team screaming out. And when I heard that they didn't get the money for Londonderry Park, oh my goodness, because out of Castlereagh Park since 2001. And it is a hard existence being an Ards fan, because at the start of the season they started well and you thought they would be competitive, but it's just, the indifference, good result, a draw, and then a bad result, a poor result. But Igor Rosicki of Armagh City, always scoring, great to watch. But I'm watching some great players, week in, week out, and wondering to myself, will they actually be poached during the window? Because a lot of teams will be looking at these players as well. Look, I mean, Jay Donnelly, well, top scorer there, 11 goals, and he looks as fit as ever on Saturday. And, there's a guy playing for Anna United, Toby Janadu. And he is one of the quickest and most efficient goal scorers I've seen for Anna United. He's got 7 goals in 12 appearances this season, Peter. So, yeah, I can see the talent, but Paula once mentioned to me, but don't be mentioning about John Butcher on the air. So I said I wouldn't.
Who then do you fancy? Because we could see a situation, as you've slightly alluded to, where it it's the likes of maybe Anna, Limavady, the Welders going round trying not to slip up against teams who are either players or are playing for contracts, or it's managers trying to sort out this new side to take things on next year. Have you
Mm-hmm.
got a favourite at the minute? Do you think it's between those three, or could Loughgall break back into it?
I think when you look at the table, Anna have conceded the fewest number of goals, and that's always a telling factor. I think at the BMG Arena, I think you would give them a goal start. Kieran McGurgan seems to have come back this season. I think they were suitably chastened after the manner in which Carrick did put them to the sword. But you also have to look at it. Portadown are out of the equation. They've gone up, stayed up. Bangor are gone. So it's like, whose turn is it next? Loughgall, to me, would need to get a run together. One of the things about it, Peter, is that no side seems to be able to put three or four wins together. And that's because the old cliche goes, any side is capable of beating any side. But crucially to me, Anna put that run together at the start of the season, even though they've got a game in hand. They're 2 points ahead of Limavady, but the momentum is moving towards Paul Owens' side. Personally, from what I've seen this season, I haven't seen as much of the Welders as I would like to have seen, but I like Limavady. I like the setup. I like the showgrounds. I like the people. And watching some of those players, the lorries, that's that bit of experience. I have a funny feeling for Limavady.
I am somewhat with you there as well. I just think the big difficulty for them was trying to build themselves back up after last season. I think they looked, especially with moments in the cup, like they've got these bits of talent. But then you add in a few extra players. Maybe it took a while just to figure things out. But you can see that from management to the leaders on the pitch, they know how to go on a run and can become very, very ruthless. So I think everybody will have an eye on it, and I think most like fans will probably have an eye on being pushing for Welders, pushing for Limavady, pushing for Anna. But I think it could be a bit tighter this year. And again, in previous years you would say, oh, none of the top flight
Well,
teams would really want to take on second. But I
yeah.
think this year, I mean, it could be a Portadown, Carrick, or Crues. I don't think
Well,
anybody will
I
take
think
them on.
the history is there for the Premiership side to actually, be victorious against the second side in the Championship. That's the way it is. And I think, that's a statement of fact because if you're playing that level all season and when you come down to play a team that's second, and I think Anna found that with their cost against Carrick, maybe it was the Stephen Baxter factor. But I just hope that after Christmas, this thing hasn't been done, it's not done and dusted. I don't think it will because we've had the excitement. I've been doing the championship now 3 seasons, lock all. I was there the day they went to Dundela, more or less wrapped it up. They had a big crowd up there. And then we were down, they played Ballyclare in a draw and they got the cup. I was there. The following season, we had the drama, Portadown Dundela, and there's a clip on YouTube where I actually break the news to the Portadown team, and they were all running away screaming, and I'm going, I hope I heard that right, right? I hope I heard that on the in my ear, right? And then last year, Bangor won it at the Welders, one of the biggest crowds I've seen at the Welders, and it was a great occasion. And the joy, the unrivaled joy at the end was superb to see. I'd love to see it this season again, going to the final day and some ground packed out. But I'll tell you, Peter, there'll be some crowd on Saturday at Anna against Loughgall because Portadown aren't playing. I don't think Glenavon are playing. So that's the
The
only show in
mini
town in Armagh.
Ulster Derby, mini mid Ulster Derby. That
It's County Armagh is the hotbed of football, whether that's Gaelic football or association football. It's the way to go. But yeah, Murph was it'll be spicy. I can tell you when they come down here on Saturday, and I think that will be very interesting. I intend to go down to see the County Armagh Derby in Orchard County there, and I must say, driving from Portadown to Loughgall on Saturday is the Orchard County beautiful this time of year.
it's a dark oil drive to Loughgall.
Aye. And the clock's went back there, you'd be doing that in the dark on the way home. So, yeah.
Done it plenty of times. Done it plenty of
I'll
times.
tell you, Peter, have you ever driven from Oma to Derryview? Oh, it's terrible. 16 miles.
That sounds like a country song.
It does. Somebody once says, keep going. If you see a green phone box, you've gone too far.
We look ahead to the weekend. It's Halloween on Friday, and I'm sure that'll continue on into Saturday. Interestingly, not a huge amount of games on 3 o'clock on Saturday, so you can find time to pick and choose. Maybe you could watch 3 games across the weekend. We'll not really comment on the Coleraine Linfield game because for a majority of people listening, that will be in the rear view, but clearly that'll have an impact. My guess is draw, but a victory one way or the other would be massive in this early title race, and you gotta say momentum is definitely with Coleraine. But we go into Friday, Halloween night. Glentoran against what's left of Portadown. It's on the TV. It's hard to say that, oh, well, Glentoran will walk this, but Portadown are without our McCarey. Did Ben
Yeah.
Wiley go off? Is there other suspensions or injuries? Oh, Alton top at the back because of yellow cards. Who's left?
Yeah. You'll have to take Glentoran to win that on paper. After that win on Saturday and the manner in which they snatched that win at Seaview, they will sit down, they'll have a chat tonight, Tuesday night, or tomorrow, Tuesday night. And, they'll say, if we go again, we've poured it down, they're a team that's wounded. And I would expect Glentoran to maybe win that 2-0.
Especially with a situation where the reserve keeper healthy? Is it going to be an under 20s goalkeeper go in nets there? Is Fife going to be in from the start? I mean, who knows? Maybe
Oh,
somebody gets signed, but yeah, I would back Glentoran there. I've been giving good guns to them. I think for
hmm
what they'll need is to get a goal within that first half just to calm things down. Because I'm sure if you get to that first half 0-0, I would imagine the men from County Armagh would shut it
yeah.
down, and then you're really having it difficult to try and break through 11 players. So I'll go 2-0 to the Glens. I'll maybe give them a wee penalty to get them along their way. The other game on Friday night, not televised, an interesting fixture this because I'm sure Bangor will see this as you know a game which should be fruitful for them to try and get 3 points, but also Carrick have got to stop the slide here, and maybe are a good matchup against Bangor. Going down there to Clandyboy, do you favour the home side?
Oh, you need to, Peter, and I think they'll get an excellent crowd because they always did in the championship on a Friday night. Particularly, they had a couple of Friday nights against ours, and Clandyboy Park was bouncing. And the social media for Bangor always shows you the teams coming onto the pitch and then they pan away to the crowd. I think Bangor, after their form of late, they've got that momentum, the town's behind them, and on their own pitch at home, you would expect, Bangor to come away with a 2-1 victory. Maybe it'd be a closer game than you would
I
anticipate
agree.
because Carrick will, Stephen Baxter will have them, sort of G'd up for the game. They've a lot to prove after the performance against Cliftonville, but momentum's a great thing. And I think if they start throwing the ball in early on to Ben Arthur's, they could nick one in the early stages, and then that would be Bangor's game, in my view.
I think this is a bad matchup for Bangor. I think this is probably going to be a 0-0, 1-1 draw. But I would put it in. I know it's not cup, it's the Irish Cup kind of time, but I would stick it in the shock show just because I don't think Bangor know or really like the idea of being favourites, and Carrick may get something with the lights. But yeah, I'm going to say 0-0, 1-1. And of course, if Bangor win there, they and Linfield don't get the right result against Coleraine midweek, Bangor could shoot ahead on points now. Plenty of games in
Well, funny,
hand.
I was speaking to Bradley Ferguson, who I know from Belfast City Hall, where I work, and I was saying, is Clanny fit for Europe this season? As a suggestion, he says, no, we're 2 yards, 2 meters short with the ground. So obviously they've gone and measured it.
Uh, Well, I'll tell you what, I was there at the Crues game, and as soon as that result came in, everyone was going, we're ahead of Linfield, we're ahead of Linfield, ahead of Linfield, after their loss on the Friday night. So, they are loving this. What like, a fan base that probably doesn't really, based on previous history, don't expect all these wins, no matter what league they've been in. They're in dreamland. So,
Yeah.
that's the game on Friday. We move to Saturday. We've also got a game on Sunday. Coleraine against Glenavon.
Oh,
when
goodness.
when these two sides last faced off, there was controversy. I don't think there'll be anything controversial about Colerane's win on Saturday, but I mean, there's been a couple of shocks in recent times.
Yeah, Peter, are we clutching at straws here? We've, you know, you have a team of professionals who can grind out a result the way they did last Saturday. It really is, it's like an in the lion's den for Glenavon. How long can they hold Coleraine back for? That's the question. Coleraine scored early. It's going to be one very long afternoon for Glenavon. I could be proved wrong, but the bookmakers looking at that. That's your banker. That's the banker.
Well, we'll have to see if there's egg on our face, but this is not the games that Glenavon will truly be measured upon, and maybe it's the type of thing where Michael O'Connor's looking at this to try and sharpen up his side, but he does go from Coleraine away to Glentoran at home, and then, well, Crusaders away. That's going to be a rather tasty matchup in a couple of weeks, but
Yeah.
that's down the line. The Swifts against the Crues. The Swifts keep home comforts here, and this could be an interesting one because maybe we could see goals going back and forward. I just think the way the Crues have been going, I kind of see this as maybe a bit of a 2-2 draw, which probably doesn't really help them where they are. But
Yeah.
you
I
know,
find it hard to call, Peter. I mean, it's very hard to call because, Dungannon have sort of turned the corner, but Crusaders still, Declan's going to have them going onto that pitch fired up. It'll be a grinding match in my view. It'll be a battle of tactics. It'll be, one goal in it. That's my prediction. One goal in it, maybe two
I
Dungannon.
do think if the Swifts score early, it will sink the Crues. The Crues want to come out, attack, try and get themselves in front, and then try to exploit space at the back for the Swifts. But just the way that the Swifts set up with their three at the back, there's often not a huge amount there. But the Crues have players that can dribble through you. But Dungannon, they're well set up and they're tactically very astute. I'm going to say 2-2. I'm going to stick with it, but I can see this being and it's not going to be a good look for the Cruise.
Do you know Martin, who's in the? Have you ever? You can hear him the whole time. Whenever Dungannon scores, go go go!
Oh
He
yes.
does the. Oh yes.
Well, he
So maybe if you can just get that maybe once on Saturday, that might just get them over the line.
it's about Cruz scoring because I could get I'm very confident that Gannon will score. It's just how many Cruz will score in return. Barry, you can look away in horror if you wish. This is a game that I like to call the Slemish Skirmish. It's Ballymena hosting Larne. There's a more boring name for this matchup. It's not really a derby, but we can pretend it is. Like Ballymena have had a lot of tough games. They've had Coleraine, they've had Linfield,
Yeah.
and Glentoran there, and now they've got Larne. Could it be a full sweep where they get really nothing from these?
Yeah, yeah. We look at the start of the season and Ballymena did their Anna United. That they were yeah, they were getting that good run. Larne will be very disappointed at the manner in which on Saturday they dropped points to Bangor. Gary will have them going up to the showgrounds. I think the fact that it's an inverted commas derby is not really, going to phase Larne. They'll bring a good crowd up to the showgrounds. I think it might be too hard to call. I would sort of see Larne coming away with a 2-1 victory. But depends basically, don't know, Peter, how to put it's going to be interesting, but I do think Larne will have that wee bit more in the tank and that wee bit more to prove after dropping those points last week.
Yeah, I think if you're a Larne fan, you're keen for this side to race out of the traps and check off that result last week because Ballymena can be tricky, especially if there's 20 minutes to go there. That's probably the game plan if you're a Sky Blue fan, if you're Jim Irvin. Keep
Hmm.
it tight for 70 minutes and try and catch Larne as they push men
Yeah.
forward. I think I'm going to.
It's the one ground, Peter, that I've noticed that, when Ballymena are up against the wall, say they're 2-0 down, they score a goal, the way that that crowd would get behind them in the second half and the way that they can motivate Ballymena. So if Larne, sort of play it the way they can play it and sort of, professionally and sort of do it, but if they let Ballymena give them a sniff of any sort of comeback or any sort of whatever in the final stages, yes, that could be very, very tight.
Well, we saw that at home Ballymena are able to get the points against Linfield. Can they get another big scalp? I don't think so. I think Lorna are going to get maybe a 3-0 victory. I just think they'll be able to stretch their legs as we half five kick off there. And then we get the Sunday. Can Cliftonville, because it's being televised here, can they repeat the trick that they had against Linfield a couple of days ago there in the Cup? I kind of like it for them. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to say 1-1.
Yeah, I think 1-1 is I think that's
A horrible result for Linfield. But I just haven't seen them get out of this malaise that they're in.
yeah, but I mean, when I listened to what David Jeffrey said after the defeat to Portadown, and okay, they did beat Ballymena last Saturday, but there's a lot of pressure on those players to prove themselves. There's a lot of, you don't know, we can't appreciate the pressure within that actual Linfield club to, winning the league every season is not what they want to be doing. When they lost out to Shelburne in the European Cup, there's a bigger business plan floating about there. David's frustration at the manner in which they lost to Portadown, that would have been relayed to the players. And he also actually had a lot of things to say about the loss to Cliftonville in the County Antrim Shield, because he did say the most important match for Linfield is the next game, regardless of what it is. That hurt as well. The manner in which they beat Ballymena on Saturday sort of says to me that Cliftonville have, it's there for them for the taking, but Linfield will really need to up it a gear, and that's why I think that it could end up as a draw, maybe even a scoreless draw. They might cancel each other out.
Well, I think for Linfield fans, they'll expect nothing short of a victory for them. We'll see if Linfield can start to exercise those demons of the past couple of weeks. I think it's a pretty big game for the Blues. And you know what? I'll say for the Reds, it's a free hit here. Keep tight at the back. Try and see if you can catch them on the counter and see what maybe Eric Woods can do again. It was a very different Linfield side, not there when they did win out. But it could be another case of the Linfield slip continues. Barry, that's our fare for this week. Great to have you back on the podcast. And a bit of a road question this, but just
Yeah,
the man that
pleasure.
you are. Do you have any strong opinions on horror films? I'm sure you're a man that enjoys the classics.
Do you know what? I tried to watch Halloween again because I haven't seen it in 20 years. I mean, I watched it 20 years ago. It was dated. So it's almost like black and white. No. Do you know one thing I've never watched, Peter's The Exorcist? And I don't think I ever will, because I've heard people saying it'll scare you, or other people say you'll laugh to death at it. No, in the 70s and 80s.
Mark Kermode, I mean, that he says it's the greatest film of all time. It is, how would I say this? It's a slow burn. It's a pondering watch.
Do you know Stephen King? Stephen King, I used to read all his books, and I used to say that, I try and get into the mind of you're lying at bed at night and it's warm, and you've your foot hanging out of the bed, and you bring it back in because subconsciously you think that a hand's going to grab it from under the bed. That's what he was trying to sort of get at when he was doing his sort of books. And Alfred Hitchcock was the same. He wanted to get that sort of horror where you're driving along the road and there's a car crash on the other side, and you're driving along and you notice that it was your brother in the car crash. That sort of psyche that you need to actually get into in a horror film. And you've seen it. Some of the best horror films have got some of the greatest psychological bangs. But over Halloween, I don't know. Remember the Blair
I
Witch
do.
Project?
But the less about insert
God.
Glentoran joke here, the better. Barry, now that you've opened up this can of worms, favorite Stephen King book?
Oh, it. And also, well, I have to say it, Shawshank Redemption. But anyway,
There it is. I finished it during the summer, so that was my big summer read. It's a monster, but we'll continue this conversation
and at
off
another
pod.
time.
There you go, guys. Stephen King horror movies. I guess you expected all that. There's a brand new series about it. Anyway, Irish football. Forget about all those books. What about books written by you, Barry? Where can people get them? Because they may have been intrigued by your deep historic knowledge of the Irish League, which you put down to paper. You
Well,
put out one this calendar year, didn't you? A stocking filler, perhaps, because we're days away from that being a statement we'll say.
Well, a little bit of Irish football is going to paperback now, which is good. I've been in Easton's and not Easton's, Waterstones in Belfast. I've, every day moving it right to the front of the bestsellers list uh, until I've been told to get out. The Little Book of Armagh, which I did, they're actually putting that out as paper book as well. So if you want to read something where you'll put the book down and go, I never knew that, that's hopefully what I try to do in my little book. So yeah, Peter, thank you very much for the plug.
Until next time, Barry, I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Who said the Irish League isn't cultured, eh? Had a wee chat about multiple things. We had, was it Greek mythology last week or so, or 2 weeks beforehand? It was a bit of a Greek tragedy with Ross and Joe last week. I think it was maybe Stephen Alexander who did the little Greek analogy. And then this week, we had a little Stephen King chat at the end. Feel like I've been down for that for a while, but hey, we finally got it. All it took was Barry Flynn and his wonderful big brain for us to natter through it. But if you want to be big brained like Barry Flynn, I would follow this podcast on whatever platform you wish. If you're on Spotify, if you're on Apple Podcasts, just click onto the Kicking Match page on that platform. Go find a wheel, go find a dot, go find the thing, and hit subscribe. It's free, it's easy, and it means when I'm having these crazy, mad, busy weeks, if it's late on Tuesday, early on Tuesday, maybe it's a Wednesday, hopefully not, you get a notification and it's free and you have to sit there and swipe and go, what is that guy up to? Probably playing music somewhere else. But yes, great to be with you this week. Look forward to being with you next week, and I hope all goes well. Boo.